Let's get underway and bring our scintillating conversations to a close. Thank you, Councillor Mayling. Tēnā koutou katoa ngā mihi mahana kia koutou, he kara kia tātou. Tui ki runga, tui ki raro, tui ki roto, tui ki waho, tui tātou te tangata, ki te kaupapa o te hui nei, ki te kaupapa o te rangi nei, mauri ora kia tātou katoa. Welcome everybody. A little housekeeping. For those on Zoom, just make sure your microphones are turned off, please. So we have Councillor Greening present on Zoom. So we're a little worried about our quorum, but we've got 9, so 2 people can't go and have a pee at the same time. And just to remind everybody that media either are or can be present, and that the meeting is being recorded and is available on our very popular YouTube channel. Apologies, or a few apologies today from Councillor Alice and Maru. They're attending a court matter in town, and for lateness, Deputy Mayor Bryant and Councillors Walker, not Councillor Mayling because he's here. Is that all the apologies that we have? Thank you. So I'll, if someone's happy to move, Councillor Dowler, and second by Councillor Kinamont, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We come to public forum. Jude, you're up. Welcome. Great to have you here. Come up to the table. And you see there's a mic there, just sort of pull it in a bit closer to you, and there's a little button, and when the light's red, you're good to go. And Kelsey's got your presentation up ready.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Yeah. Kia ora koutou, ko Jude Tukungoa, no Pukorora hau, nā nei noho ana hau ki Riwaka, ki whakatauki waki e ki noa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora, my name's Jude Heath. I'm the manager at Tasman Bay Guardians. Grew up under the shadow of Wharepapa on a tobacco, horticulture, lamb, sheep farm, and now I'm managing a non-profit environmental organisation that provides education, monitoring freshwater and marine from the mountains to the sea, Ki Ita Kutai. I'm here today to just reflect on 1 year of our Y Connection delivery, and I've got a presentation above to share with you, and I will go through it quite quickly because it's 10 minutes, I hear, and thank you so much for your presence today. Ngā mihi. Ngā mihi, Chris. So we'll make a start. Just a short snapshot of what Tasman Bay Guardians does. Marine events, freshwater snorkeling, community engagement, working with landowners, collaborating with stakeholders like the Brooks Sanctuary, from Tasman Environmental Trust, New Zealand Landcare, schools, and community groups. And the hapu, most importantly. It's a very quick snapshot showing us working around Inanga spawning sites. Across the district, we work with DOC and Council, and we have a plan of monitoring and restoration. We have other projects up in Y Connection, looking in the marine reserves, and we have a new project, a Lovely Marina, which looks after the seagrass and sea kelp, working with Cawthron, Otago Marine NZ. We'll move forward, thanks. want me to just give you a thumbs up? This is our crew, and they are an amazing group of passionate people with educational degrees and a lot of experience working in the environmental space. They're based locally from Mohua to Motueka, Richmond area across Whakatū to Wakapuaka. The objectives of, we're under the umbrella of Mounts to Sea Trust nationally. We are their provider for Te Tau Ihu, and this trust provides environmental education strategies, programs, resources, and community engagement activities. And we advocate directly with communities and government for establishing a system of conservation measures and biodiversity protection areas. We support opportunities for young professionals to work and engage alongside schools and communities in the environmental education setting from preschool to tertiary. And we foster and support the pursuit of scientific research in freshwater and marine with understanding traditional knowledge of aquatic ecosystems. We provide technical and scientific assistance to community schools and environmental groups, and we are backed nationally through Mountain Sea Trust and locally by businesses, other funding communities, and yourselves, which is great. So this is just showing the PO of Mountain Sea Trust. We'll move forward. Thanks, Gina. And our vision is thriving freshwater marine ecosystems that are protected and restored by connected communities. Thanks, Gina. Our guiding principles are honouring Te Tiriti o Te Waitangi, collaboration, open source data, sharing, empowerment and innovation, integrity, pono aroha, fun and passion. We like to ignite the passion, walking alongside community in a fun way to inspire them to want to do more in the community. We support landowners with knowledge, and we're community centred in conservation. We connect people to Te Taiao, and that's our main objective, is to engage them and create a passion. So the Y Connection project rolled out nationally is from the Mountains to Sea, Ki Uta Ki Tai, which we collaborate at collaborative partners. Thanks, Tina. And we work in central government, iwi, hapu, landowners, other support organisations in the area, as you know, Tasman Environmental Trust, New Zealand Landcare, Fish and Game, and work in regional, local council, and plus business support and industry support. The achievements to date, this was the end of last year, we actually are supporting 400 catchment groups across 13 regions nationally, and we've exceeded our goal by 293%. We've created a number of maps, focused catchment map series through ES Ecology Christchurch that support catchment groups and understanding their catchments. And we've had overwhelming support and feedback from the community groups for educating them, involving them, and immersing them in their local waterways. We also have a community-based freshwater monitoring website, and these focused catchment maps we are looking to extend into a national database for all citizen science for all these community groups. So part of the Y Connection delivery, we supply eDNA to areas, community groups, landowners that need it, and they're normally in areas where council haven't been, in sub-catchments, and provide the education around the resources. And you can see the top of that diagram is a picture of our catchment map we supply from ES Ecology, which is Lawa Council doc information, all layered to give them a snapshot of what's happening within their catchment. Our key initiatives are education programs in schools and linking those schools delivery to community groups and restoration projects. For example, Dove School linking to the Dove River with restoration, working with that sub-catchment group. The engagement activities and presentations involve planting days, stream workshops, and Nanga spawning workshops, engaging coastal community on how to look after spawning restoration in their own backyard with simple measures such as trapping when the eggs drop in spawning season, and giving them ideas on low restoration with native plants to improve the habitats. Community-based monitoring, we support these sub-catchment groups. We supply Niwa Schmick stream health monitoring kits and training, and we're linked to the Niwa data, and we support the monitoring restoration plans. We have Survey 123 supported by Mount Sea Trust for citizen science, plus we have a brand new NISHRIP database rolled out nationally that DOC are taking on board, and hopefully all the councils, and that's their Nanga Survey 123. So we do marine monitoring, as I said, and reef restoration, working with Cawthron and Marine NZ Otago. It's just a picture of Bridget's mum there. At the bottom left of community groups engaged, looking at macroinvertebrates and bugs, and Schmacker's group to the right. That's a group of 10 sub-catchment groups coming together to share their data and knowledge, and we link to experts in council and Cawthron, and it's an ongoing supported monitoring, citizen science monitoring. So we're a community-centred model by locals for locals. We're based on a needs assessment and a tailored package of support process, and we focus on building capability and capacity for mana whenua, iwi, landowners and schools. So our emphasis is on community involvement and freshwater management, and fostering equity and collaboration in fun ways, such as taking them snorkeling, getting in and looking under the water, and spotlighting is our next event at Kaiteritiri next week, engaging the community to look what's alive in their waterways there, based at Bethany Park, and Kaiteritiri Reserve Board is supporting that. Locally, we have covered 77% in Nelson region, more than 53% by now, but we have all our staffing are contractors, and they are all part-time and passionate, and that's why there's quite a few of them. This is a glimpse of Wakatu Nelson. That's the community and catchment groups we've supported so far, and the amount of schools in the last year. And we're linking those schools to those catchment groups. This is Aori and Tasman. You can see it's huge, and there's still a lot of work to be done. We've created a lot of interest within subgroups, within existing catchment groups, and support them with catchment plans as well as the monitoring restoration plans, working alongside TET and Council and DOC. So that's just a glimpse of our NISHRIP spawning surveys. They are all the spawning sites across Tasman district. You can see there's quite a lot, and our last year's results have shown that Nelson, there is only one site that has eggs left through habitat degradation, and that Tasman is really strong in the amount of eggs but needs more restoration on those sites, and Mohua is depleted through sedimentation, suffocating the habitat and depleting those areas. These spawning sites are generally in a zone of 200 metres, so they're very easy to restore, these habitats, but they need more collaborative input from us and Council and DOC going forward. And next, thanks, Gemma. This is a snapshot from our database of what we've covered this season: 11.80 hectares, 42 egg patches found. This is Tasman. 3 spawning events recorded, and you can see quite a few eggs counted. The eyes were going cross-eyed. So that's just a result of the percentage in turf rescue. We do find that if there is native grasses to that spawning site, they will choose to settle on the native grasses than the turf rescue. A lot of education on not spraying, putting traps in has increased the amount of eggs, especially Maraho, Otawhiro. We've seen an increase of 400% with that trapping group helping alongside. Challenges, our regional onboarding delays. Nationally, it's always a big movement, and adaptive strategies developed. Lessons learned and improvement are made around communications right at the beginning nationally to get that rollout and understanding through council, stakeholders and community groups before the launch. It was quite hard with the speed that it came out. And next steps. Source in-kind funding, we need at least 20,000 next year. Collaborative funding, we're hoping to get that support from council and DOC and ourselves, finding other, we get sources of funding from philanthropists, businesses, community groups and other stakeholders working in the area. So, and also finding some secure funding for our community events, which we deliver in Tonga Marine Reserve, Rotorua, Waitapu, Motueka Awa, to engage community into that space and learn about wanting to protect it. We do have some sponsorship, but we find that's an ongoing challenge. Each event costs around $7,500, and to get that buy-in regularly, we've got so many people that want to do it. There could be more of them, put it that way. It's oversubscribed. It books out within a day. So there's a need for more. And the last slide. That's the mat, Rotorua, snorkeling the kids, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jude. We've got a question from Councillor Butler, and there might be others.
Thank you. Thanks for making time for that. Thank you, Jude. Yeah, I just remember back in the day when Tasman Bay Guardians started, and it seems to have morphed into something that's actually quite different, but it's still got the name. So the original Tasman Bay Guardians was marine, and monitoring marine conditions and sedimentation and that type of thing. So now you seem to be attached to a national organisation and have kind of changed your stripes and doing a huge amount, and it's quite difficult to keep clear about all the actors in the space. So my question is just really about that marine work and the sedimentation and all that work that was done with Tasman Bay Guardians originally. Are you still doing that?
Yes, in fact, from the very beginning, Mountain Sea Trust, we have been the provider of Mountain Sea Trust in Northland, but we started with the marine. So that's why that was the space up till 2016. And then we launched Whitebait Connection. So the two sides of Mountain Sea Trust are the marine and the freshwater. So we've still got the same vision. We've just expanded ki to ki tai. And yes, it's really important to be clear about what we do and how we're doing it. And that's why I'm here today, but we still support the Marine Reserve education and sedimentation, cockle monitoring, and the pilot program at the moment is an extension of all those other smaller programs that's linked into community and industry. And that is with Cawthron doing the seagrass restoration and also seaweed restoration. So yeah, we've just expanded. A lot of our board on Cawthron, Dr. Al Alda and Harry Alder through council and Stu Robertson through DOC. So we've got a very strong board in the marine focused, and that seems to be where a lot of our energy is growing, expanding again. But it is all dependent, to answer that question clearly, on funding. So that's why it's a slow burst And then you'll get some more funding towards freshwater, and there's a bigger burst there, and we're trying to get that sustainability for both areas. So that,
Thanks, Jake. And just from me, did Mountains to Sea lose its funding? Has there been a big change in that funding stream to that?
good question, Chris. They've just received an extension through to June next year, and we are waiting to hear exactly what that is. And it's very targeted towards farmers, land-based groups that we've been working with for further support. And that was because there's such a momentum brewing that they wanted that scaffolded into when the farm plans come out next year to
Okay.
keep
Yeah.
that momentum going.
And you're collaborating in with council staff. There's a lot going on, isn't there? There's a lot of different
Yes.
groups that you're and organisations and agencies that you're working with, and but you do collaborate in here with our staff.
Yes,
And
your freshwater team. And,
Yeah.
Catchment team behind it.
yeah. And what is it that you like from council?
At this stage, it's just to acknowledge, to let you know what we're doing. And then if anybody has any ideas or feedback on how we can actually support these Inanga spawning sites further with funding, co-funding, or ideas of support for these community events. And just keep the comms clear of what we're doing and open. Yeah.
Councillor Mayling.
Just a quick question. Gee, thanks for your presentation. I think I went on a e-counting down at the Waimea Inlet, and I just wanted to ask, do you collaborate with the Waimea Inlet Trust that's doing that? Because there seems to be some overlap in some ways.
We are collaborating with the Inlet Forum. Is that part of it? Yes, yes.
We've got reps on the site.
Yes. I forgot to mention we work pretty closely with Taio Days, are very popular for iwi, for different iwi groups, and there's a huge wish for more of those from the mountains to the sea for the whole Taio space to bring mana whenua. And also with the education, the reason we're different is when we deliver education, the whānau comes with us. So it's a subtle way of educating the whole family about the environment.
Thanks, Jude. Appreciate you coming in and your time here, and good for us to refresh ourselves, I think, about the scope of what you're doing and how connected you are with some important other agencies too.
Namaste,
Kia ora.
Chris.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? There are none. Late items. Right. Let's confirm some minutes of the Environmental Regulatory Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 1st of May. Is someone happy to move that? Councillor Mayling. Seconder, Councillor Kinnemont. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And the minutes of the Animal Control Subcommittee meeting held on Wednesday, the 30th of April. Councillor Kinnemont's moved and seconded by Councillor Mayling. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. There are other minutes in the report, but they're not, weren't ready in time to be included, so we're not moving those today. Which brings us to our report. And the first one is the draft control of alcohol in public places bylaw. Kat and Dwayne. Kat and Alan. I didn't acknowledge board member Knowles. Welcome. I did when you arrived. We had a wee chat, and but I haven't done it formally. But that you're here. Thank you. Yes, Deidre.
Kia ora koutou. Today we are seeking approval to consult on the draft control of alcohol in public places bylaw. We have worked alongside the police and Te Whatu Ora in the drafting process for this, as well as workshopping it with yourselves as well. The police have said, or local constable has said that this bylaw is one of the most useful pieces of legislation that they have for preventing crime. Most settings are proposed to stay the same across the district. It seems to be working really well. However, we are proposing to reduce the size of some of the alcohol areas, including in Collingwood, Pohara and some surrounding areas, and Tapawera, due to limited evidence that there has been alcohol-related problems in those public spaces. And that aligns with the requirements that are set out in Section 147A of the Local Government Act, which determines requirements for when we're making a bylaw for the purposes of controlling alcohol. Richmond is also proposed to stay the same in the proposed bylaw. However, in the consultation document, we have set out a couple of different options, and these are proposed. We've got different options for all of the locations where there may be a change. And that just means that come deliberations, the option to extend out into the Richmond West area still remains available to the deliberations panel without the need to reconsult. And once again, the reason why we're proposing to keep that the same is because there's limited evidence that there is a significant problem. We're required to show evidence that there's a high level of crime and disorder that is caused or made worse by the consumption of alcohol in public places in order to make a new bylaw, i.e. to extend or make a new alcohol ban area. And while there are some stats that show that there are some goings on in that area, it equates to maybe between 10 and 15 over the last 5 years. And the local police are also happy that the current settings are working well. There aren't significant problems happening in that area. So rolling on as it is considered a much lower risk. Having said that, I'll ask you to also turn your minds to the recommendation 3.1 that you are satisfied that there is a problem in order to justify making the bylaw. So if the drafts are approved today, consultation will take place between 6th of June and 7th of July, and we will also be looking today to appoint a hearings panel, and hearings are on the 15th of July. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Kat. Councillor Mayling?
Yep. I'm happy to move this. In a previous life, I spent a lot of time dealing with alcohol abuse, and this is a very useful tool for our police. It tends to be teenagers who are experimenting with alcohol, and if you look at the stats from Richmond, there was an awful lot of incidents over the period. So it's been refined. I think it should go out for consultation, and to me, it just makes sense, and it really assists our police in making our community a safer place and reduces risks for teenagers in particular that can be experimenting with alcohol as they grow older, as certainly as I did as a teenager.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie and then Councillor Green.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, look, I'm happy to second it. Certainly when I've gone to community association meetings and made mention that we're doing this piece of work, communities, they want this bylaw in place. Just to remake a point I have made earlier, some of them want their little decals on their pavements repainted. So that's just something to note. But yeah, I think I'm happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we've moved and seconded the resolution without having appointed a panel. So let's attend to that, and then we can check in with the mover and seconder around whether they're happy with that. That'd be a reasonable approach. And then I'll come to you, Councillor Greening. So as I understand it, Motuwiki councillors are happy with Brent to be on this panel. That's still the case. Yes, he's not able to be here. And these bylaws have tended for me to come to me to chair as chair of this committee, so I'm happy to do that. So we're looking, I was thinking actually, I didn't have a chat with you, Celia. We were going to last night, didn't we? We missed each other, but then given that I'm from Mohua, then it really we could go Richmond, Motueka, Waimea as a, you know, somebody from each of those wards if people are happy to do that. Is that reasonable?
Well, Councillor Ellis is on the alcohol, the deputy of the alcohol committee. So to me, it makes sense for her to do that if she's happy to do it. Otherwise, I'd do it.
Yes, I think the other thing to consider is, and she and I've had a chat, is to ensure that workload of these is shared.
He's happy to do it.
Okay, so we can have Councillor Shellcrass, you're happy to, in the triangulation of the Waimea Motiri ward councillors are happy with that? Yep. So me as chair, Councillor Maru from Motueka, Councillor Shellcrass from wherever you people are from. out that way, in that wonderful part of the world up there. Else. Yes, I'll just, Councillor Dakey, are you?
Unless Councillor Greening online is going to say that he would like to do it, I think Councillor Ellis would probably be available to do this.
Okay. Councillor Greening, have you got something to say just about this aspect at the moment?
No, I've just got a few questions.
Yeah, just in terms of the hearing panel. So I think we're going with Councillor Ellis. So we've populated that. Okay, so just checking in with the mover and the seconder. Good, thank you, everybody. So Councillor Greening, you've got some questions?
Yes, I have a few questions. I suppose the questions really are premised on the basis of, do we really need to go into consultation? From what I'm hearing, we're reducing the size of the bylaws application. And on the basis that there is at least no evidence of any problems in the areas where we are withdrawing the scope of the bylaw from. I mean, one could easily suggest that the fact there's no activity would indicate also that the bylaw is applying because people are complying with it. So I do have a little bit of a concern there that the bylaw is proposing to reduce its scope from certain areas. But more significantly, I suppose, I'm just conscious of staff time and staff costs, and given the minor nature that is proposed, and probably the lack of evidence to support the assertion, I just think that we don't really need to go here. I think, and so my question really are in relation to, first of all, does the report that we currently have before us meet the threshold for a review under section 158? And if council decides that no changes are required, we don't want to diminish the scope of the bylaw, do we then need to consult under section 156?
Thank you. I'll just get a response and then I understand you have further questions.
Through the chair, yes, we do feel that a consultation using an SCP is required. Section 156 requires this when we're revoking or reviewing bylaws if it's considered significant. In the report, we've noted that this is of moderate significance. By a large portion of the community probably won't be particularly bothered by it. However, there will be others who have a higher stake in this who will want to have their say. And so we consider it best practice to provide the community the opportunity to do so. Alan.
Yeah, so just to add to that through you, Madam Chair. So, you know, on section 158, you know, effectively the bylaws expired, run out of its time frame. So if you don't review it or create a new bylaw, you effectively default to the situation where you don't have any control. So that's, you know, that's an option open to council, but it's not one that we recommend. In terms of the form of the consultation, or under section 156, you have to consult in one form or another. So you definitely need consultation if you're going to have the bylaw. So assuming you want to keep a bylaw. And then the question is, do we do that through an SCP or under section 82? And yeah, so that under section 156, you would need to use the SCP if the matter was considered significant. That's under our significant engagement policy. Or the council considers there's likely to be a significant impact on the public due to the proposed bylaw, to the changes and those sorts of things. So I guess that's a judgment call for you. I guess from my point of view, I think that's a bit marginal whether it meets that threshold. However, if we did consultation under section 82, we would still need to invite people to make submissions. So that people will be making written submissions in a similar way they would to a SCP process. And there is a principle under section 82 about providing people the ability to present their submissions in a form that they are able and is their preference. So we probably would need to provide some option for people to present in a verbal form. So it ends up looking quite like a STP anyway, because you have written submissions and you have to give people the opportunity to present in a form verbally. And so actually the question of whether it's an STP or a section 82 is kind of a little bit moot.
Thank you. That's a really helpful clarification and a good question to ask. You've got something further, Councillor Greening?
Yeah, I don't think my question was actually answered. It was assumed, and you moved straight to 2. My question is, and I think this is really the heart of it, is does section 158 require a review of an existing bylaw? Does the current council report meet that requirement for a review? I understand if we don't consult, like we don't review it, then it expires. Or are you saying even if we review it, it still expires and then that triggers the need to consult? Because I don't see that in the provision. All I see in 158 is a requirement to review. And if we review, then we've met the needs of 158. I'm just wondering, where does it say that the bylaw expires after a review?
Again, for you, Madam Chair, I don't think that it says that a bylaw reviews after review. It expires if you don't review it. So
Yes,
if you don't review it,
exactly,
or establish a new bylaw. So
yes.
yeah, so the choices available to the council are either to review or create a new bylaw, or to let the existing bylaw lapse, in which case you wouldn't have a bylaw.
Yes. So my question is, does the report you provide that threshold for a review? So we've met section 158, so the bylaw wouldn't expire. And then my next question is, if we don't make any changes, because we've done a review and we've decided there are no changes, do we need to consult under 156? Because 156 seems to imply you only do a consultation if you don't have a bylaw, i.e. you're making a new one. And if we've done the review, it hasn't expired, so there isn't the need for a new one. Or if you're amending or repealing it. And if we don't make any changes, we're neither amending it or repealing it, we're effectively rolling it over.
Okay, so again, under section 156, you do need to consult if you are making a bylaw, amending or revoking a bylaw.
That's right.
In this case, we're technically making a bylaw because the existing bylaw has effectively gone beyond its period of limitation. So if we had done it within the period that it applies, we could have reviewed it. In this case, technically, we are creating a new bylaw, and therefore there is a requirement under section 156 to consult.
Okay, so what you're telling me, just so I understand, is you're saying that this report isn't a review and we can't do a review because it's already expired. Is that what you're saying? There
Through the
currently is no bylaw.
Through the chair, there is currently a bylaw.
Oh.
Because it was a new bylaw, it was required to be reviewed within 5 years. However, if it's not reviewed within 5 years, it stays in play and is able to be enforced for another 2 years after that. Until relatively recently, the position of staff, or until probably mid last year, the position of staff had been that reviewing the bylaw within that 2-year grace period still meant that the bylaw, that the new bylaw that was being made was not new, it was a reviewed bylaw. However, the most recent legal advice we've had from Simpson Grierson was that we have to consider any bylaw reviewed within the 2-year period is now going to be a new bylaw that we have to review again within 5 years. So we're working through a process with some of the review timelines. There will be some 5-year reviews coming up, and that's the case with this one as well.
So just to be clear, you're saying we haven't reviewed it within the 5 years. We are reviewing it within the 7-year period, i.e. the extra 2. And because we haven't reviewed it within that 5-year period, it effectively now, according to Simpson's advice, has expired, even though we've got an extra 2 years to put in place a new bylaw. Is that what you're saying?
Through the chair, no,
Okay,
it has not expired.
It hasn't expired.
It hasn't expired, but it will expire in December if we don't review it.
Okay, so
We're
then
gonna
my question is,
Councillor Green, just a moment. So we've gone around this reasonable amount here. I know it's complicated. So can this just be your last question for clarification, please?
so if it's still valid and we have reviewed it, then why is it expiring?
Again, Madam Chair. So effectively, the existing bylaw will expire whatever we do at the end of December. So it's because we've missed the 5-year review period.
That's what I'm trying to say.
The existing bylaw will expire in December. So either you leave it to expire or you create a new bylaw. And in this, we're recommending here that you create a new bylaw.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, because I imagine the public are trying to get their head around this, as well as probably a few councillors. So just to make it clear, because this affects other bylaws as well, are we ensuring that we are reviewing our bylaws before the end of the 5 years so that we can avoid doing consultations if we choose there's no material changes required? Because what I'm hearing today is we didn't review it within the 5 years. We got an extra 2 years extension, but because we're outside the 5 years, Section 158 effectively doesn't apply. We didn't do our review in time, and now we have to create a new bylaw. That's the message I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, we are definitely trying to get on top of these bylaws and the review periods. I have to say, how we deal with these internally has changed over recent years. So previously, the subject matter experts for the individual bylaws did the reviews, and so they were dispersed across the organisation. The strategic policy team now are taking a lead across all of those bylaws. So we are very much keeping an eye on the bylaws we have currently when they reach their 5-year, or after that they go into a 10-year. Once they've been reviewed the first time, they go into a 10-year review period. So very much trying to do that. We are in a little bit of a state of catch-up at the moment. So we are trying to get on top of those bylaws. So there will be some others where we are potentially outside that 5-year timeline, but we're aiming to get back on top of them and make sure that we don't get into this situation again in the future.
Just one final question, if I can, through the chair, which is just in relation to cost of consultation. I know I've asked this question before in full council meetings, but I still have not received a reply, which is, what is the general cost of these consultations, i.e. staff time, advertising, all the rest of it? Because I've had in the past quite an extraordinary array of estimates from 15K to 100K. So just wondering what the cost of these consultations would be. And it would be useful, I think, for further reports, that the cost of these consultations is actually placed in the report, so council understand exactly the cost of doing all this stuff, as did the public.
again, I'll just pick that up. So in the deliberations meeting for the schedule of fees and charges recently, I was asked about the cost of consultation for that process and the development and financial contributions policy. I think I explained at the time we don't necessarily record staff time specifically around it, so any estimate would be broad. And I undertook to come back to the council with an estimate of the cost of that consultation, and I have got a process underway to prepare that information, and in due course you will get that. So that will give an indication. They're not all exactly alike, but it will certainly give you an indication.
Thank you.
I think this has been raised before too with the previous bylaws that we've been processing over the last, well, nearly 6 years I've been here. The business about the 5-year review and not catching that and then ending up in this different process. So we're onto that, eh? So we're all eyes on the next one that's where there's any level of risk of, yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Dowler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one update in the paperwork, please, on our laptopy thingy, page 47 or page 9 of attachment 1 in Motueka under the 24-hour ban. We have Manoy Street, Rugby Park and Talbot Street. It's not Rugby Park anymore, it's now Sports Park Motueka. That is the new name of that facility. And just a comment there, until the new rugby club rooms get spilled on the property, good luck having an alcohol ban in the grandstand after the boys have a game of rugby while they're watching the next team play. Done it for years.
Thank you. Anything further? I think that the business about whether if we were going to have changes or not, I mean, we don't make decisions at workshops. We certainly gave an indication for some, or through the process since, around some of our wards changes that we think need to be considered. And I think drawing back in some of those areas, should there be support for that in the community, is important, because it looks like there's a bit of a broad brush. Someone picked up a broad brush at times instead of their finer one, I think. So I certainly think there's value in the process. Right of reply. Very good. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you both. And we move to responsible camping bylaw. Decision to consult. Welcome, Amy. Shannon.
Morena, kia ora koutou. I'll just take a few minutes to run you through the report because it's quite a complex one, and then invite questions. So today we're seeking your approval to consult on the proposed responsible camping bylaw, which will help the council to manage freedom camping issues in Tasman and improve council's regulatory and enforcement abilities. This bylaw is made pursuant to the Freedom Camping Act 2011, and it applies to local authority areas, which is council controlled or managed land within the district. The Act was amended in June 2023 and now permits freedom camping in a self-contained vehicle or a tent or other temporary structure in local authority areas. Freedom camping in a non-self-contained vehicle on local authority land is prohibited unless a council bylaw provides for it. The council was outside the statutory timeframe for review of the 2017 bylaw, so we won't be able to rely on it for summer 25-26. Staff will be recommending it be formally revoked and a new bylaw made, which is the one we're proposing today. So we workshopped the new bylaw with you last month, discussed the various legislative changes, local freedom camping issues and hotspots, and the need for a new freedom camping bylaw. You indicated a preference to have a bylaw to help manage the adverse effects of freedom camping activity and to direct where it shall be restricted or prohibited. Our responsible camping strategy provides direction for managing visitors to Tasman seeking free or low-cost camping opportunities, and we want to continue to be welcoming hosts to people wishing to enjoy a unique Tasman experience. We expect our visitors to respect the special places and communities that they pass through. The proposed responsible camping bylaw updates how we will manage responsible camping across the district by identifying where and how freedom camping can occur in areas, and also enables us to enforce this. It complements the national rules and our responsible camping strategy. The Freedom Camping Act requires all sites proposed to be considered for freedom camping to be assessed against specific criteria. Attachment 3 provides this analysis, and these supporting site assessments have been provided to the New Zealand Motor Camping Association for comment. We are yet to receive any feedback. So the key changes from the 2017 bylaw, we are proposing to remove 3 prohibited sites. That's at Best Island, Hickmott Place Car Park, and Staple Street, Motueka. We're adding a new prohibited site, Pukikoikoi Historic Reserve, at the request of Te Atiawa and supported strongly by Ngāti Rārua. They've also indicated they're interested in potential further protection in the broader Puketawai area between Riwaka and Tapu Bay. So we've encouraged them to wait for consultation and provide any views on how we may do that. We are retaining but reducing and better defining the 8 prohibited township areas. And we're reducing the available self-contained vehicle sites at Motupipi Car Park in Tākaka from 22 to 11. We heard your concerns regarding Dix Reserve. We propose to reduce the available self-contained vehicle sites there from 60 to 40 parking spaces and restricting overnight parking to weeknights only. Our thoughts for that were to support setup of the Sunday market. We're open to discussion on, so we had in mind that would be a prohibition on Saturday night and Sunday night, but we're open to views on if that could perhaps be Friday or Saturday instead. Basically, it's an access issue, and we want to ensure that freedom camping activity doesn't impede setting up of the market or public access at those busy weekend times. To slightly offset the reduction in car park provided at Dix Reserve, we're proposing to add George Quay back into the mix with 12 parking spaces at the eastern end of the parking area there. And we're also proposing a new site of Waiti Recreation Reserve for a maximum of 10 vehicles. And self-contained vehicles are currently permitted to stay overnight in a specific area there under the reserve management plan. We wanted to acknowledge that non-self-contained vehicle camping does occur in the district, and we want this to happen in the right places. We're proposing to add 3 non-self-contained vehicle parking spaces at the Motueka Beach Reserve Freedom Camping site, where there are sufficient facilities to support this, and also providing 19 self-contained vehicle parking spaces at the same site. There's no changes proposed for the Freedom Camping sites at Whittle Street, Richmond, and Alexander Bluff. So the draft bylaw provides for 147 freedom camping parking spaces across the district. No tenting is permitted under the draft bylaw. However, this is provided for under a reserve management plan in some reserves. This is a new bylaw. The Freedom Camping Act requires council to be satisfied that this bylaw is necessary to protect the area, to protect the health and safety of people who visit the area, and or to protect access to the area. The bylaw must be the most appropriate and proportionate way of addressing freedom camping problems in relation to that area and not be inconsistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. So staff consider that the prohibitions and restrictions in the proposed new bylaw are necessary for the purposes identified in the Act, and the site assessments detail why for the specific purposes for each area. We've considered 5 options for addressing freedom camping issues in the district and consider that a bylaw under the Freedom Camping Act is the best option, implemented in tandem with non-regulatory measures. The proposed new bylaw may give rise to some implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, but it is not inconsistent with the Act. Based on the site assessments, staff advise the imposition of prohibitions and restrictions on freedom camping in those local areas with high significance against the criteria in Section 11 of the Freedom Camping Act are fair and reasonably justified limitations on individual rights to address the identified problems related to freedom camping in the Tasman district. So the Act also sets out the consultation requirements for a new bylaw. We must use the SCP, and we seek approval today to commence consultation with the public on the draft responsible camping bylaw under the SCP. The consultation period will run from 7 June to 6 July, and we've prepared a summary of information and statement of proposal with the bylaw attached to support this process. Those documents will be finalised later today. And the consultation approach is set out in section 11 of the report. Finally, hearings and deliberations are scheduled to be held on 15th of July and 28th of August, and we are requesting that a hearing panel and chair please be appointed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Very good outline there. And let's populate the panel before we move and second the resolution, I think. And we have some offers already. Councillor Walker, I think, happy to be on there, and Motueka have played paper, scissors and rock for that. And I'm happy to chair again. In terms of Richard, great.
Check my calendar first.
I mean, I'll be to the chair, but given that Richmond has no substantial changes proposed in any way, I wonder if it might be beneficial to have a extra Motueka or a Golden Bay councillor, but whichever way the chair wants to go. But
yes, there was
limited changes in Richmond, none proposed. So I think the more involvement in the other wards. So just putting the option out there that perhaps
yes, it's whether there's it's hard to know whether the submissions come in, particularly around Richmond, but there won't be. There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that interest you, Councillor Butler, to be involved? Okay. And Waimea Mokiri?
Can I just ask Amy one question? What dates were the hearings again?
Hearings are scheduled for the 15th of July. Deliberations will be the 28th of August.
15th of Tuesday.
Yep.
Yep. I'm happy to put my name forward.
Okay, and Councillor Kinmont, so that we have 4. Great, thank you. And Councillor Dowler, you've got something to ask or say, and then Councillor Butler.
Yes, please. Just referring to the Freedom Camping at Dix Reserve in Motueka. Being down to the market on a Sunday, sometimes at 6:30, 7 o'clock, just to see how things are going, etc. If you've met Judy Roper on a good day, she normally has the Freedom Campers gone by 6:15. If they don't wake up when she bangs on the door, she goes around and bangs on the panels until they're wide awake and they're backing out and gone. The biggest issue we have with the Freedom Campers in Dix Reserve is the rubbish tins overflowing. They just tend to load them up, and that's just an issue that goes with it. So personally, I don't have a problem if they're there on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, because she does look after it. The biggest issue that she has is the people that go to the Spring and Fern, drive to the car park, load up, then get a ride home in their cars in the car park, and they turn up at 10 o'clock in the morning and they're surrounded by people in the market and they want their car out. She used to be able to get one of the local towies to go down and remove them, but council said she can't do that anymore. So she's one guy there. I was down there one day and he was adamant he was going to drive his car out, and he didn't. I can tell you that he wasn't allowed to. So that's just my opinion. What the committee and that decide at the end of the day, just leave it at that. Thanks.
Very specific local knowledge there. Thank you.
Through the chair, can I just note that the overnight camping period would be from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. So we thought that 8 a.m. would mess with the market, basically. So that's why we're proposing to have them not there over the weekend. So we could either look to allow it over the weekend, and then change the overnight period to have them out by 6 a.m. That I'm not sure if that's a fair way to approach it. So that's why we went with prohibiting it overnight in the weekend.
So in there says they've got to be gone by 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning at the moment.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So if it's
So
like that,
you'd prefer to retain that as a 6 a.m. clear out in the weekend?
Let's let's
Let's
make
chat
sure that we're not
Right.
going into deliberations now. But
Sorry, so it's just so we can be clear what we're presenting for consultation. We could, so currently in the consultation material, it's prohibited overnight in the weekends, Saturday and Sunday nights. We could see what feedback we get on that, or we could amend that to
I think so.
the 6 a.m. clear out.
I'm inclined that we receive to what we receive in Northern being getting to be fixed on that. I mean, there's enough to go out with, isn't there, around option? We could do this or we could do that.
We're not proposing any options in the consultation material, so it would be submission feedback on if people did not agree with the overnight prohibition in the weekend.
And is that's sufficient as an approach? Surely.
It is sufficient, yeah, but if that's not the preferred option that you'd like to present for consultation, we can amend that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butler. Oh.
Just in relation to.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you through Chair. And thank you for the mahi that you've put together for this. I'm just concerned if we go out and there isn't any other option but that you can't park there on the weekends. My personal take is you'll be pushing a problem somewhere out into our community, which will be creating much more of mayhem than what we currently have, which is working quite well with duty on most weekends for the market. So I would prefer that there was an option A or B as to what Dex Reserve timing could be. So yeah, if that's possible.
Through the Chair, yes, we can provide an option in the consultation material.
Thank you. Councillor Takey.
Through the Chair, my question, I actually sent it to you last night, Amy, and hopefully got set, was just around where you've mentioned permitted only on weeknights, which actually then still leaves people parking there on a Saturday morning, and with you actually meant no parking prohibited on weekends because, well, you know.
Through the Chairs, yes. So the intent was permitted Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, clear out by 8 a.m. and then prohibit it for the rest of the weekend until Monday night again.
Yeah, for me, I don't particularly see the value in it. But my question, I guess, I had on it is an enforcement one, trying to enforce this. Do we have the ability to put this in? What would that require? I mean, you think about people that a lot of freedom campers, do they even bother to read the sign? Do they look at what day of the week it is when they park there? They're just going to go there because they, park there 2 nights. Next night, they might have to move on. So my question is, would we have an ability to actually enforce that if we make this? Because one of the considerations when we make these, is it actually enforceable?
Through the Chair, yes, it is enforceable. Our officers do routine checks, and if this prohibition was to come in, that would just be part of their check to make sure that by 8 a.m. everyone that was freedom camping has moved on.
Councillor McKenzie, and looking for someone to move and a seconder.
Thank you. I just, mine's a very basic question. Apologies for that. So in Wakefield, we've listed Edward Bagent Scenic Reserve as an area which is prohibited for freedom camping. So we have a number of other reserves in Wakefield, Faulkners Bush, Robson's Reserve, the other Bagent Reserve up Pigeon Valley. So what is the situation with those other reserves, and why is it that we are just mentioning Edward Bagent Scenic Reserve?
Through the Chair, thank you. So that particular reserve was a prohibited area under the 2017 bylaw. We've discussed that with the reserves team, and they're still concerned that it could become a problem area. It's a nice tree area with a nice park up spot. The other reserves, overnight camping is prohibited in all reserves under the Reserves Act. And we were not aware, the reserves team did not indicate that they would like any specific reserves prohibited other than the ones presented in the draft bylaw. So the overnight camping ban in all other reserves still applies. It's just not dealt with under freedom camping enforcement.
So, yeah, so, okay, that's good. because I know the community certainly doesn't want camping in Edward Bay Gint, but it's not, so it's going to be prohibited, but it's prohibited in Robson's, Faulkner's and the other one. So I'm still not clear why we're highlighting this as just specifically prohibiting it, because if people read it at a high level, they might go, oh, only that one's prohibited, so therefore the other ones are open for freedom camping. So I'm still not completely clear for you, Chair.
Yeah, so why, how come the Act doesn't apply there?
So the Reserves Act applies to all reserves under the Reserves Act. By including it within the Freedom Camping Bylaw, we can also use the enforcement powers under the Freedom Camping Act, which we can't use for reserves under the Reserves Act. So it's two separate enforcement regimes. The reserves team have highlighted that this is a particular reserve that they want to have that high level of protection, fines, that kind of thing, which is why we've decided to continue to prohibit that.
Okay, perfect. And so they're all prohibited, but we know there's been a history in the past of people camping there, so it's could be a problem. So we want greater enforcement powers in that place, but the other ones we don't assume will be a problem.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good question and clarification. Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Chair. Just as I wrote to you, Amy, about the removal of Taupara Point, this went into the Freedom Camping Bylaw in 2020 at specific request from DOC because of the effect on the coastal birds. It's a very significant, internationally significant coastal bird feeding and roosting area, and it is right adjacent to that that little road reserve. And just, I don't know, it's pretty relevant, but apparently there was actually a rave there in the weekend, you know, masses and masses of vans. So the fact, the rationale that it's not visited very much actually doesn't stand up. I mean, I've seen that place absolutely jam-packed with vans. And so we did have protection of wildlife as a criteria previously, and that has disappeared with no explanation. We are still subject to the coastal policy statement. And so I'm just at a loss to understand why, because it's a bylaw, that we seem to be exempting ourselves from our responsibilities under the RMA, and in particular the coastal policy statement. Later on in our agenda today, we've got a report about biodiversity, the biodiversity strategy, etc. And one of their aims is to try and spread the protection of biodiversity throughout the council processes, and try to get through these silos where, you know, okay, that doesn't apply to us because it's a bylaw. My question is, have you thought about including Taupara Point in there, and would you consider it when we think about the requests that came from DOC and from the Ornithological Society and Forest and Bird originally to actually add Taupara Point in? So we're actually taking it out when it was added in for good reason.
Thank you, through the chair. So we've reviewed the 2017 bylaw that was amended in 2020. It was not included as a prohibited site, so it was removed with the 2020 amendments. We do still assess wildlife. It hasn't been assessed as a site because it wasn't in the prior bylaw, the amended version of the 2020 bylaw. The criteria for prohibiting a site is quite high, so we have to assess it against those three criteria in the Freedom Camping Act. Wildlife assessment is part of that. So it's access, protection of the area, which includes wildlife or conservation values, and health and safety of others visiting the area. So that particular gravel reserve site does have a lot of visitors accessing the area. So there's bird watchers, and it's also the gravel reserve. So there's contractors coming and going as well. Over the last couple of years, we haven't issued any infringements at that particular site, and we haven't had any complaints come through either. So we don't really have any evidence to be able to assess that in terms of health and safety or access or complaints. We have reached out to DOC, and so in the previous bylaw, there were 5 sites adjoining DOC land where overnight camping is prohibited, and we've retained 4 of those. We asked DOC if there were any other sites that they would like to see included, and they did not indicate any other sites. So we haven't had the evidence to be able to assess that and include that in the draft bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I just would make the comment that it being a remote, it's not likely to actually have neighbours complaining about it. But being remote, it's also very attractive to people to actually go and gather around and have raves and stuff like that because nobody's there to notice. So I think that criteria, has it has to be considered, according to the locality.
So through the chair, I absolutely acknowledge that. I think the other factor that we need to keep in mind is that the national position has changed. So the national position is much more permissive of freedom camping, and it actually can now occur in a self-contained vehicle anywhere in the district. Our bylaw will prevent tenting, but anywhere else in the district, a self-contained vehicle can park up overnight. It may help disperse people a little bit wider.
And in terms of the assessment for the site, you don't feel like this has been a borderline thing? You feel like that there's not really, in terms of the assessment you do, the criteria aren't there for taupata?
We haven't specifically assessed that site, and from what I understand, it would just be wildlife protection, which could be reasonable. Perhaps we could, through consultation, have a discussion with DOC around their views on they still consider that site needs to be protected from freedom camping activity.
So it could be addressed through the process.
Yes, it can.
So it doesn't, that it's not included now, doesn't mean it can't be as a result of the process.
No.
How about that?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. Let's do it in the process.
Thank you.
Are you happy to move by chance?
Yes, I'm happy to move.
Thank you. And have we got a seconder? Thank you. I'm going to put the resolution. Oh, Councillor Mayland.
Just briefly, I'd support Councillor Butler in relation to that. I have seen freedom campers there in the summer, and people don't tend to complain. And we need to use every tool in our toolbox to protect these precious shorebirds and that are endangered. And this is one of those tools. So simply comes down to, because once they're gone, they're gone. We'll never see them again. So we should do everything we can to protect them.
Thank you. And I think the change in the legislation nationally, the change in the default is significant, isn't it? And so I think it's really important we address these matters. Thank you. So Kelsey's included an amendment to the resolution in relation to the Motueka issue around overnight parking, which allows the, yes, I'll just finish, which allows you can then,
The 2 options.
the 2 options can then be incorporated. Yes.
Thank you, Biden. Chair, sometimes my brain works, but so I just thought might be a minor amendment staff might wish to consider is when we write the hours, we might want to write the reverse. So not only where it is permitted, but write the other way around where it is prohibited. So write the hours you cannot as well, just in the document, because if I could, I read it with a bit of either way, perhaps just clearly writing the hours it's actually prohibited will mean that everyone reads it clearly in the community, so they're not seeing different things. That's all. Thanks, Chair.
Right, we all in? I'm going to move on a seconder. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. We're gonna go with Peter, our harbour master, and then we'll have a very brief drink or grab a drink after that because we've got to finish at 12 to accommodate the council meeting. It's very warm in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Welcome, Pete. Over to you.
Councillor Chair, kia ora. Just proposing this exemptions for the RES clause. I'll take the document as read and ask for any questions before you make a decision.
Thank you. Councillor Takey.
Thank you, that's very Chair. Just a question, with these AIS, the cost is around about probably 2,000 per vessel, approximately, I'm guessing something like that for a vessel of this size. In the intention in the long term is that more and more vessels will move to this system. Is that the intention of it, that over time across the nation that more and more of these will, as the price comes down, that we'll end up with more of these?
So we've already seen a significant drop in price over the last year. I've seen units, imported from China, but as low as about $380. So the units are coming down in price. There's a couple of other bylaws in the country that are looking to bring this rule in as well. They're currently already in Wellington, and I think there's a couple of other areas looking to bring the same clause in. In our region, we've got the split dates of September this year and then September next year for the remaining 50%. So these operators are just trying to get in to say, well, they don't believe their operation needs it because of the reasons.
My question, thank you. My question on that was going to be, when the costs has come down and they have to apply, and there's a large fee to apply to get the exemption, the amount between applying for the exemption and installing the device is getting narrower and narrower. So hopefully in time, it will just sort of sort itself out and people will choose to put in the device. But I'm happy to move the recommendation on the fact that people are going to come, I mean, you're only going to come forward if you're genuine. It's costing you to come forward to apply. So happy to move.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Kinnemont and then Councillor Dowler. Are you seconding, Councillor Dowler? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Walker, your name's actually here first. There we go. Could you give me a wave?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just a question really, and then I am happy to second if it doesn't get any further around. Hey, when you talk about the two applicants who fall within the scope of clause 38, but due to their commercial character and operations, you know, it's justified for them to be exempt. Do you know of any others that are going to tag in on this and the implications and pushback that that may create, A, from industry, but B, from the residents within that area?
So I'll sort of answer that in reverse. So I'm not aware of any issues that will be caused by the residents, I guess, or that will create any issues for residents, given that these operators are very localized. They're sort of applying for these exemptions. And I think given that there is a cost to apply for the exemption, because it obviously takes time to write and obviously bring it before you guys and talk to it. And there's a lot of sort of effort goes into it. I don't think we're going to get a lot of applicants applying that they don't think they're going to get it. So if because you've still got to pay whether you get the approval or not. So it's quite a risk to go in, and it's also per vessel. So the companies that operate multiple vessels are less likely to apply. And then the other thing I'd like to point out is that by keeping the decision with the committee or the council, it does remove a lot of that sort of, she said any biases, and I don't want to be involved in doing that. I'm just presenting the information. So I want to make that sort of known that it's not my decision. I want to make sure clear that it's for everyone. So if there is any reason to believe that adverse effects could happen from this, I'd like to think that it would be brought forward and we can discuss it openly. One of the operators in this case is only seeking the exemption because he's on a leased vessel, and when he gets his own vessel, he will be putting it on, and he is happy to do that. He just doesn't want to put money towards this boat that he doesn't think he's keeping very long.
Thank you. Is there a way in which somebody could get an exemption and then their use in some way changes and they would then be out of the criteria for exemption? Is that possible?
So there is a clause in the exemption that says the Harbour Master can revoke the exemption at any time if a navigation safety reason occurs. So I could essentially put in a direction that overrides it if, you know, I need the data to prove that there was an issue. I wouldn't be able to do it willy-nilly. So I'd need some reason to say, okay, they've changed their operation. They're now out of scope of when the exemption was issued. That's revoked. Let's reapply and resubmit to council.
Does the exemption, I might have missed this in the reading, but does the exemption relate to the vessel or the owner, the business? And then if the boat is sold, the business is sold, is there anything in that?
So it relates to the vessel.
Yeah.
So if the vessel was sold, it would stay with the vessel. However, if they change the use, it would trigger the.
Still applies, yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Kinnemont, and then I'm going to put the resolution.
Thank you through you, the chair, and thanks for coming along, Peter. I've got a few questions. The two exemptions that you were looking for today, we've got 3 more in the pipeline. Is that correct?
Possibly. So I'm talking to operators to say, well, are they going to apply or are you not going to apply? And there's possibly 3 more vessels that I think will apply, but I have not had any forms or paperwork given to me yet. So until they submit it to me, I can't do anything with it.
Where does the Mapua ferry fit in this?
They are one of the operators that I have sent the paperwork to, and they assured me they would send me the paperwork within the next few days, but that was 2 weeks ago, so I'm still waiting.
Okay, so what happens after the 3-year period when the exemption finishes? I've got clause 5.5 here, granted for a period of 3 years. So what happens after the 3-year period? Does the exemption lapse?
Yes, so the exemption would lapse after that time period, so they either reapply or look to comply.
So my last question is, this seems to be more of a process sort of issue as opposed to a governance issue. And I'm wondering why it's around this table here where you or the CEO should have ability to authorise the exemption. Is there some rule that says that we have to do it, or can the staff not do it themselves? I'm probably looking.
Yeah, I did take advice from Leith on this one, so I'll let him answer that question.
Through the chair, at the latest council meeting where you considered delegations, you decided to delegate the power to make these authorisations to the Environment and Regulatory Committee. There's no reason why you couldn't go lower than that if you chose to. That would be a decision of full council.
No, but cheekily, I would like to suggest that we do go lower because it seems to be a process as opposed to a governance issue.
Thank you.
Just one thing I'd like to add as well is that within the next 3 years, I would prefer to be looking to have another shot at reviewing the navigation safety bylaw, in which case we might be able to come up with a way of rewording the clause to negate the need for so many exemptions, I guess. Or more vessels will be compliant anyway, so it will negate the need. So my theory is once you've done the first 3 years, it's unlikely to do too many after that.
Yeah.
So I don't see it happening much after this first round.
Thank you. I'm going to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say, oh.
2 seconds.
I do. I've got moved by Councillor Dakey and seconded by Councillor Dowler. Oh, we had a double second.
Yeah.
Share them around later. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Peter. Let's have a very quick break to grab a cuppa and perhaps bring it back in here. Let's be back by 5 past at the latest. Thank you. Group Manager's report. Over to you, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take my report as read, but note that subsequent to the report being finalised, the government has indeed embarked on a consultation program regarding, I think it's 16 pieces of national direction under the RMA across a series of packages, and those packages have distinct, different characteristics. And in addition to that, elected members will be aware that the Minister responsible for the RMA has written to councils via a letter dated the 29th of May, which has been distributed to you all. And that detail, luckily, unfortunately, thankfully, the detail of that letter aligns with the predictions that are in the GM report in terms of what was likely to happen during the course of the week. Now, the slide in the background here shows who, how across the sector is working with the Ministry for the Environment on shaping the various elements of the reforms around the Resource Management Act. But as a unitary and our territorial authority responsibilities, I mean, we are caught up in reform under the Building Act too, and a bunch of other acts that are sort of also out there for discussion at the moment. So the Group Manager's report endeavours to create a sort of a sense of a bit of a landscape of what is in play at the moment. I think we've pretty much had the runway towards this set out in recent committee meetings, so these things won't be as a surprise to any of us. But what is clear from a staff perspective is that what has landed on us now is probably beyond the scope of the resources we have to actively engage in everything that's at us. So therefore, our reliance on the sector for support is going to be quite considerable in some areas. And the task ahead of us is to determine where our priorities would go in terms of putting effort. And in that endeavour, the standard practice would perhaps be for when we know what we're picking on, would be for staff to come up with some suggestions by way of submissions, for those suggestions to be shared with elected members, for those submissions to be tidied up and then ultimately signed off by the Mayor under very short timeframes. The opportunity does exist here, I think, for councillors to consider a much more involved or greater level of involvement prior to just having this work directed towards you, because I think there's a case for saying that the priorities may well determine, and getting indications from councillors where those priorities ought to go, given our scarce resources, may well be a useful thing to do rather than have staff second guess those priorities. So I have suggested to the chair that we take a bit of a head count or a hands up indication of whether elected members want to be involved in the process that will be coordinated through our policy team. So with those few words, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Mayling. And perhaps if you could indicate, if you're just going to ask a question or make a comment, if you could give some indication around this idea of being involved in that process, would be good.
Well, I've already had a brief discussion with the Mayor, read those reforms, and in consultation with him, I've been concentrating on the freshwater side. So I read that yesterday, and I also did the bit on the wetland. So to me, I think elected members' involvement, I support that. I did note the response last week from, is it Tutakaka or something similar, your thing that said a bipartisan approach with not having changes every 6 years or every 3 years would certainly help the sector going forward, because I think this is the third lot of changes that I've seen in the last 12 years, roughly, and it just creates a huge amount of work that is paid for by ratepayers. So I would endorse a bipartisan approach going forward, and I think elected members that are interested should be involved. But it's so wide, we should concentrate on some key issues for us, and to me, fresh water is one of those.
And if I could just add clarification. So the body we're talking about, which is not specifically shown on the slide, is Te Reo Kahika, which is the regional voice. So that's where the regional sectors come together to consider what are the implications for the regional sector coming out of the reforms, and that sorts of messaging as part of what's been sort of put out. The groups that I had on that slide previously are dedicated groups that have been formed by the Ministry for the Environment to work with them, and so that they can improve the advice to ministers. And they're drawing quite heavily on the Te Reo Kahika network, but not exclusively. You'll see there are other members in there from territorial authorities and the like. So they've got quite a wide catchment, but yes, certainly Te Reo Kahika is the representative of the regional voice.
Thank you. Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you, through the chair. Am I able to ask some questions on Mr. Drummond's report that are outside what he just talked about. I want to talk to
Yes,
the harbour
I think
master.
anything in the report, but as we do that, just indicate whether you have an interest in being a part of that process.
I'm happy to be part of that process, but I've got 3 questions mainly to do with the harbour master. And I see he's still here, so that's good. The blessing of the fleet, your comments about that. I was there unofficially in the stand enjoying the event, and it annoyed me at how Councillor Walker was here representing us and yourself. It annoyed me that we didn't seem to get a mention. Sentinel was there, and you were there, your whānau. And I would like to see something go back to the organisers of the blessing of the fleet to say that recognising the Tasman District Council's input. So that's my first question, if something could be going back to them. Second thing.
I just perhaps give you feedback on that particular one. Like you, I detected that, and perhaps that's a bit of a pattern because I recall something similar happening last year. And what I can say is that we have taken those matters to the people that were actually doing the hosting on the day. They've both been spoken to, and they both understand that actually that could be done differently. And there's an undertaking to do that differently. So our elected members do get properly recognised on the day. And indeed our harbour master vessel being out on the water also gets recognised. So those are the 2 things that we wanted to reinforce. We've taken that message to organise, and I think it's been favourably received.
Yeah.
Thank you. 2 more questions. Page 206, clause 10.8, about lead weights in the thing there, the floats. Talking to yourself and previous harbour masters, they've always had trouble with the buoys moving to keep them upright. So I presume you're putting gravel down the bottom to keep them upright. If that's true, would you not look at going to an engineering consultancy type company and say, we can do some sort of float that's maybe narrow down the bottom, high at the top, and stand vertical in the sea? That one.
So we are aware of working with a Marlborough company, Indac, that make floats, and they are actually ballasting them for us now. So they're designed and built for the job now. So yeah, that issue has been solved, but they're not using lead. So I just want to make it clear that anyone thinking they're going to get some cheap lead out of our floats washing up on the beach, it's not lead. So that's the main thing there. So yeah, Indac do all that for us now. We're not ballasting mussel floats ourselves. That's never going to work, and just any engineering will be dearer than manufacturing the floats properly. So shouldn't be an issue anymore.
Okay, thank you. And the last question. Your report is very, very good and very detailed. I don't see anywhere in there where it mentions your collaboration with the Nelson Harbour Master. Presumably there is regular meetings with them, regular contact with them. I personally would like to see, because Tasman Bay is one half Nelson, one half Tasman, more input and more collaboration with Nelson. And I'd like to see any reports, how you're working with them. I presume you are, but just see it written down would be nice for me. So any future, would that be put in your reports?
So I'll take that one. The Harbour Master gives us 2 6-monthly reports, which is where these matters are, spread out how things are working across the whole fraternity. Indeed, it's more than Nelson Harbour Master, it's how we interact with Coast Guard, Department of Conservation and others who are on the water. What we do in the GM report is just pick up little matters that have occurred in between the committee meetings. So it's not expected, the comments in this one are not a comprehensive summary of what's happening in the Harbour Master space. We wait for the 6-monthly reports to give you that sort of feedback. But your point is noted, and very much that's active work for us to make sure we coordinate our use of our resources to the greatest extent possible.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, through Chair. Have we ever done any comms out there for our community saying that our floats aren't full of lead?
It's featured in a couple of the council reports, and I think it was picked up by one newspaper last year as well. But we haven't done a proper media release, I guess, about it. Given that this only happened one float this summer, I don't see it being a big issue. If it became an issue, I think we definitely need to do something.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to the topic before about all our submissions and consultation and stuff like that. The marine space, I think we don't generally go there, do we? I see there is National Environment Standard for Marine Aquaculture and Commercial Forestry, but I don't think Tasman District Council wants to get too much involved with that. Is that your impression?
Obviously, we have quite a considerable role with aquaculture, and we're bringing those. We've had presentations to this committee. We've also had presentations through at least the Golden Bay Community Board. So it's a big part of the world that we're in. In terms of trying to influence national policy, we've had less engagement at that level because it hasn't been something that we've surfaced as a priority given the other things. So we've tended to leave that one to the wider sector submission. We did in the RMA Bill number 2 earlier this year make the point that council saw less of a need to engage in wild fisheries management, and that was a voice. This council felt that, whereas other councils felt different to that. And I think when the mayor presented to the select committee, he made the point. That was our mayor presenting on behalf of the regional sector. He made the point that sometimes councils see things differently. So we do have a sense that those are matters that are better attended elsewhere rather than engaging our resources, but it doesn't mean that we're not interested in it.
Yeah, so that's clarified. That's where I thought we were at. So we're in more of a following role with that. The natural hazards, I see you've got here likely areas for consultation. This would be interim national direction. How do you think we're going to be doing much on that, like submitting much on that? I mean, I'm quite interested in natural hazards from the point of view of, the climate change, sea level rise, landslips and stuff like that. But if it's not going to be a priority, then.
So on that one, the government is signalling that they will be undertaking consultation on that. And I would suggest that it would be a high priority for this council to be involved in that. When we talk about the non-disclosure agreements that are in place, several of our staff are involved with discussions with MFE officials on that very reform under non-disclosure agreements, so they can't share that information. But ultimately, when the government put their proposals on the table, they will be heavily influenced, I think, by the perspectives of Tasman. And I think that it's likely to then transfer into one of the priorities that we would pick up for being quite interactive with over the engagement opportunity. So I do think that is something that we will be bringing back through to this committee when the timing is right, and that we will be having quite some considerable input.
So yeah, I'd be happy to
put your name
in that
down.
space, and also with Kit as regards the freshwater.
Now, part of that focus, the focus of councillors who want to be involved in that is around where focus goes, contributing to that discussion around where are we going to. Yeah, great. We wrote you down before you said that. Excuse me. You did voice it. You didn't. You would like to. Sure. Councillor Greening and then Councillor Dakey.
Yeah, through the chair. In response to the question, happy to be involved and be kept informed, because hopefully without saying for all the councillors. I kind of have 3 threads of questions. They relate to an interesting observation in your challenges for regulators at 9.1. That was interesting. Also, para 11, the High Court decision. And just an observation from earlier today, and I know staff have acknowledged it, but it would be useful, I think, to get maybe a traffic light table or something on our program of reviewing bylaws, given that the alcohol one missed the 5-year review, just to ensure that we've got our heads over that, and so have staff, because the consequences of not meeting the review is exposing us to having to go through consultation. So that would be appreciated. Read with interest the challenges for regulators at 9.1 to 9.3. I suppose one of the criticisms of councils on local government obviously comes from an oversight entity, which is the Ombudsman. So I was just wondering, is it correct that council can ignore the Ombudsman's recommendations? And I suppose a follow-up to that question is the TDC ignoring any of the Ombudsman's recommendations for local government agencies? And if so, which ones? And I suppose tied to that is, do we have a published program of when we will be complying with outstanding recommendations from the Ombudsman and the ones that we have already complied with? So that's my first question in relation to the challenges for regulators. My other question relates to the High Court decision of para 11. Be interested to get a copy of that decision, but I also just want to emphasise, and I know you've indicated you're going to have a discussion, but I do hope, and I'm sure we've kind of given these indications in workshops as well, that council does not take a heavy hand on this issue, given clearly broad confusion across in the public. I can certainly understand the people who were involved in that decision. I don't think it benefits anyone in taking a heavy hand, especially when the rules are changing. I think we just move on. So I would hope that we don't take a heavy hand on any resolution to costs. In fact, maybe we may even want to entertain whether we even go there. So those are my questions, and that's been my requests.
So picking up on the Ombudsman situation first and foremost, I might not be the best person to reply, but we've got Leith here who will certainly be able to bring another perspective to it. But I guess that the first thing to note there is that we've had an Ombudsman for some time, and now we've got another one. And the Ombudsman's decisions are not binding on council, but generally the response to a council that didn't comply with an Ombudsman direction would be for that matter to be reported back to Parliament that a council was not conforming. That's a call for the Ombudsman, as I understand it. But generally, the Ombudsman's directions that come our way are considered as part of all sort of decisions that we subsequently make in that area. They might not necessarily be binding, but they're certainly taken into account. But as I say, we do have a new Ombudsman, and that new Ombudsman may have some different views on certain matters. So it's at the moment it's a case of just familiarising ourselves with the new approach that will come out of that office. But I think we can say quite openly that all matters that are commented on by the Ombudsman are seriously considered by staff in all of the actions that they subsequently undertake. I don't know whether Leith would want to add to that comment.
Through the chair, the only thing I would add to that is Ombudsman investigations are conducted in private, and so we are limited in what we can say openly about an investigation. But the results of Ombudsman investigations are reported confidentially through to the Audit and Risk Committee as part of the Legal Services report.
So just in general, just to follow up, because I think it's gone a bit off tangent, but the Ombudsman's made a number of recommendations. Some of them are around transparency. I'm just wondering whether we've got, again, this might be a traffic light table or something that can list all the things that the Ombudsman is recommending to local government sector and an indication of where council is meeting them either now or is projecting to it when it is looking to do it, or whether it's decided not to do it. I think that would be useful for the public because we get a lot of questions around these types of matters where the Ombudsman Office has made quite clear they've been making recommendations to local government, and a number of people are feeling that Tasman District Council aren't responding to it or ignoring it, or in some instances have told people that they can ignore the recommendations. So I think that would be really useful to have something like that, so we can also see where we are in that journey.
Thank you. Have you got anything to add, Lise, to those comments? No, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and certainly with the new ombudsman, that gives us an opportunity for to engaging and going down and doing something like that with the new ombudsman rather than retrospectively looking at where things have been directed in the past. I think that's one.
Just a point there. It's still from the Ombudsman Office. It's those recommendations are still standing and are still there until such time as the Ombudsman Office reverses them or changes them. Yep. So I don't think we should be waiting for the new ombudsman to come out. I think we should be identifying what we need to respond to and when we are likely to respond to it, or if we disagree with it, then we need to expressly say that.
Lise, got to come in.
Through the chair, look, I'm not entirely sure exactly what recommendations Councillor Granning is referring to there.
Open workshops, things like that. There's a local government recommendations report.
Thank you.
Yes, so the Ombudsman did set an expectation around how he considered meetings should run. I'm not aware that the Ombudsman has made a recommendation to the Tasman District Council about that.
Yeah,
okay, thank you. I'm going to move on from this. We've got 2 more reports after this one, and we've got half an hour to do that in. So your comments are noted. Kim's got a final comment, please.
So just picking up on your commentary around the regulators' experience. That's quite an insightful report, and I think you've read that, and you can see the challenge in the modern day regulator, and quite a lot of what we face is actually dealt to at the legislative level. So we're set up as implementers of regulation that is designed through the parliamentary process, and hence the need to focus very carefully on the latest proposals that are coming out, because ultimately the regulatory system that we're handed to implement is hugely influenced by central government, and hence the importance of making sure we understand what has been proposed and that we advise on how to make sure it's as workable as possible to achieve what the government is trying to achieve. And on the final matter, the High Court matter, the council has agreed to a suggestion of costs from the parties, so that has all been settled, and we've agreed at with the other party's suggestion as to what costs should be for the High Court proceedings.
In Lise.
Sorry, just to clarify as well and confirm what Kim said, that is in relation to the High Court costs. Environment Court costs are still outstanding.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to move to Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, through the chair. Just commentary around small standalone dwellings amendment bill. Lovely title for a bill. 4.4 says staff have yet to consider whether they'll submit an amendment or submit a submission on the bill or the proposed NES standards coming forward. I would support you doing that. Having looked at the bill, they need all the help they can get, is a nice way of saying it. The bill leaves a bit lacking. I mean, one example I can think of off the top of my head is the fine for not handing over information into self-certification is $1,000. I mean, good grief, you just not hand it over, wouldn't you, if you're a company, if that's the fine? So I think there would be some value there in submitting on the bill and the other proposed granny flat changes coming forward. And I would be happy to be involved on that as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
So just a clarification on that point. We put a lot of effort into the proposals that were heading towards the bill. So a team has formed around providing response to the bill. What we were signaling is that there are some changes to the Resource Management Act which are accompany that, and what we haven't yet made a call on is whether they submitting on those changes, so the NES and the National Environment Standards changes for granny flats and for papakāinga, whether or not that would be on our priority list, hence the desire to interact with
I
councillors.
was trying to say, yes, we probably should, given the fact that the bill it leaves a bit of wanting. So I'm suspecting overall more help for them would be better.
Yep.
Are you happy to move
Yes.
the resolution? And can we have a seconder? Councillor Mayling. Thanks, Kim. As always, very helpful outline of the moving feast. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And we're going to move to Gwynny, Biodiversity and Biosecurity Report. And just a reminder, we are finishing at 12 o'clock.
Good morning. I'll take the report as read, but I'll just highlight a couple of key points in the report. So the work is well underway for the biodiversity strategy. It's the Tasman Biodiversity Strategy. We're socialising the implementation plan and already seeing some really good collaboration work with the Department of Conservation coming out of that, as well as working with our Kotahitanga Motu partners across delivering the strategy implementation plan, which is allowing us for collaboration across top of the South. We have got the funding for Jobs for Nature projects coming to an end this month, and also seeing reduced funding coming for Wilding Pines, which we also saw last year. So it's really important that we work in this collaborative space more and more, because we're not seeing that central government funding coming in quite so much. And we would really like to highlight how glad we are to have a biodiversity database finished. This really helps us to understand the data we've been collecting through the NHT program, and helps us to collaborate well with our partners in understanding biodiversity across Tasman. And that so biosecurity in general, we provide an annual report around in November. So I haven't covered a huge amount of biosecurity in this report. We've just highlighted some of the incursion response work that we've been doing, and also the preparation for avian influenza or bird flu, giving some information on that. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Thanks for the report, Gwynny, and I'm happy to move it. What came up earlier in the meeting today was the freedom camping bylaw and a discussion about the effects on wildlife, like particularly coastal birds. There's in relation to freedom camping sites. So, reading your report about the biodiversity strategy, and how do you have a sort of idea or a picture about how these principles can kind of be soaked into the whole organisation, so that with the bylaw that there is, do you see that with a bylaw such as the freedom camping one, that there would be consideration of the effects on wildlife? And I'm thinking of the coastal policy statement and stuff like that, but also about our biodiversity strategy.
Thanks.
I know it's a tricky question.
Yeah, thanks.
So two parts to that question. The bylaw process, we're happy to feed in we have an ecologist that can help guide the decision making in that. So that's a separate process wherever we're asked to feed in. We don't have a big enough team to be actively sitting on every single group to guide that early on, but always happy to help. And then the biodiversity strategy, the aim of that is to see more collaboration, but it's across the community, not necessarily council. So it absolutely is bringing in parts of council, and that is part of the plan as we get through the system and get more buy-in. That way we would hope to see the likes of biodiversity being considered early on, for all decision making, but that's a long way down the track as we work through that, but also producing or providing a way of the community collaborating early as well is the goal.
Thanks for that. I've just got one more question, just a quick one. Are we planning to submit to the Predator Free 2050 as regards including cats?
Yes. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Genevieve, for the report, and Lindsay for the work you do, and the whole team. So firstly, it just appears that co-funding is reducing from a number of partnering agencies, which has enabled us to do a lot of good work around the district. Is that likely to be an ongoing trend, that reducing funding from others, do you think?
It's hard to predict, but in the current political climate, I think we can expect that we're not going. Jobs for Nature was a pretty unique situation to see that pot of funding, and we did really well out of that. And I think we should be really proud of ourselves of what we've managed to deliver with that money. And we do rely, particularly wild and conifers. It would be really nice to see more investment coming for that. But we do see little pots of money come out. We're working, because we work so well with Department of Conservation, when they have a little bit of money that we can spend, we can put that into our program to improve that program.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you. And then just in the report, you've really detailed around the work around wetlands and where we are at with that. And it appears once again that we're perhaps a leader in that area, which is good. And supportive of that. But I just do wonder how many more wetlands approximately our farms have we left to visit or identify on across the district? Because we must be getting fairly well through that.
Might have to get the expert to answer that one.
Thank you.
To the chair, there's I can't remember the exact figure I put in the report. Yes, approximately 1,700, but then that's a range of small wetlands and large intermingled complexes across multiple properties.
So just for clarity, is that what you've already done or yet to do?
No, that was what was yet to do.
I just wonder how you even assess that.
That is an ongoing question that all councils are working on, either using drones or remote mapping methods, or kind of working on the goodwill of landowners to provide as much info as they can to help support that.
I guess the GIS information we hold and the limited number of farms and districts makes it easier to identify. Because I think if for farm plans it's changed, then now that under 20 hectares you don't have to do the farm plan. Does that apply to the wetland mapping or not?
There are limits on the size of the wetlands that council need to consider. 0.05 of a hectare, I think. But then smaller than that, and also smaller than yeah.
Oh no, that's been helpful. So once again, thank you for all the work you do, the team. I know I've said this before and repeat it. You do have a really good reputation out in the field for the work you do. So keep up the good work, whether it's liaising with farmers on the ground on their own properties or the community at AMP shows and events like that. It all does good work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you having a second?
I am.
Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Page 208, clause 12.5. The last sentence worries me. The infiltration of stormwater into the sewage network remains a concern. This is not the first time I've raised this around this table, and it's starting to annoy me that we don't seem to be able to get on top of it, or we don't seem to have enough emphasis on stormwater entering the sewage network. Is there any way that we can elevate this into a position where we spend the dollars determining where the stormwater is entering the network so that the network life capacity can be fully extended to its natural life?
I think you're referring to what's mentioned in Kim's report earlier, although there might be a mention of it in this report. So could you just give a brief comment, Kim? But it might be something, Councillor, to take offline and just really have a conversation. So it's certainly of concern and an issue, but in terms of how come, what's at the root of inundation and those things, I think it might be helpful to have a conversation perhaps with Richard Kirby or just to get that background understanding. But Kim will have something just now.
Yes, so I think that would have been something that's come out of a previous conversation where, because it had public profile, that there were some intrusions into our stormwater system and our sewage overflows resulted from that. We've tabled that information and we've said, the investigation that we've undertaken has looked into it. At a previous committee meeting, it was suggested that we actually, when we come back to the solid report, the formal report on wastewater management, which is once a year, that we actually tell the story as to what's actually going on about managing that problem. So it's been identified. I think Councillor Dakey asked us specifically to report on what's been done to minimise that potential, because the reality is it's a whole range of connections that can bring that outcome about if people are inappropriately using the network. And then your network providers have got to deal with the consequence of that, and that is the dilemma.
An easy fix would be great. An easy, simple, cheap fix would be great, but it's a different area than that. Yeah. Anything further?
I'll take your recommendation and go offline with Mr. Drummond.
Thank you. I'm going to put the resolution to receive the report. It's been moved by Councillor Butler and seconded by Deputy Mayor Bryant. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Connie. And Matt, really good report, really interesting. I'm sure there'll be people out in the community would be pretty interested in it. I don't know how we get that to happen. Yeah, great work. Welcome, Mirka.
Lucky last. See, I've got 20 minutes though, 50.
Yeah, I think I've just been speaking with Kelsey, one of our governance experts, around the council meeting is diary to start at 12, and we can go over time. It can start later, so I think I'm sure we can have a really productive 15 minutes. But if we do need to just venture into that next 5 or 10 minutes, we can. I don't want to do a disservice to the work of your team and your report.
We probably won't need that much, depends on your question, but I haven't got much to add other than take the report as read, and just wanting to highlight one thing that is kind of building on what Winnie was saying before, and I hope that it came through as you're reading the report, and that is that the output of the team that is actually really small with very limited resources is quite high, and that's because we've got this team culture of actively pursuing opportunities and building on relationships and working collaboratively internally as well as externally with whoever we can to turn a couple of $100,000 into many millions. But there is a concern that the opportunities are sort of dwindling as we are looking into the future at the moment, but we are certainly trying our best. Yep.
Yeah, and that's certainly the impression I get from the report, is that the level of collaboration is effective and working, and it seems like that. And I was going to ask, is it's panning out as you imagine in terms of the change in the team, but also just that level of working in with whoever you can to sort of get most effective on the ground, I guess.
Yes, I think that's a very positive outcome out of the little restructure that we had to have the land and water team, and our catchment advisors who have got the capacity to actively pursue those relationships externally and internally to leverage opportunities.
Yes, the catchment roles have been really important, haven't they? It was a very good thing to generate. Questions, comments? exhortations, councillor Kinnemont.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Excellent report. Enjoyed reading it. Page 228, clause 1.2. I'm talking about improving the Hail database. Can you just remind me, is that database public or is it just on a site by site? And it's on a site by site basis. So yeah, that's my question.
There's two aspects to that Hail work. The Hail database mentioned in this report is actually the internal database. So at the moment, our team has to go to various different places to look for information to cobble it together, and that takes up a lot more time than what it should. So trying to gain efficiency, I guess, in pulling some of that together. That's internal. There is an obligation to make Hail information publicly available on as a mapping layer, and that is also currently being worked on.
My last little question, do you know when it'll be worked on, when that will be made publicly available, like next year, 2 years down the track?
Hopefully within this calendar year.
Anybody else? Yeah, Deputy Mayor. Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mirka, for the report and your team for the work you're doing again. Just at 1.3.5 up and much awake, ongoing modelling and location review. Page 221. Just wonder if you could perhaps outline what the modelling's about, and the application review, is that of the entire Upper Motueka or just some of the subcatchments, and what work does that involve? Was that for the review of the renewal of permits or something else?
That is a Joseph question, and I'm not sure if he's online. Possibly not, but can get him to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, if you could, that would be helpful. Yep. And then the other one is just around the merchants and the Buller catchments, and just in relation to the Buller FMU at 1.54, which is on page 229. Just there's a comment there about Ned's has degraded, Ned's Creek water quality. In fact, sometimes there's no water. So just wondering what the plan is there. Local interest in ecological restoration is strong, but that's sometimes difficult when there's no water.
Parts of the tributaries, I understand, don't dry, but I don't think that the main stem actually dries up. So where we're at the moment is throughout the summer, we've done rounds of sampling and interacting with landowners. We're now at the position where we still have to go through the data of what the water quality collection showed us, and then go back to the landowners to see what we're going to do and where. But some of them are keen to engage further.
I know the Sports Centre Committee are keen to contribute because they have to report on that for part of their water concern. So just that we can keep that in mind.
Nice,
thanks. And I have the contacts if we need them or can't find them here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie then, and Councillor Shallcross.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Thanks. Yep, thanks, Mirka, for your report. Just a comment, firstly, it's fantastic to hear your comments around your team culture and how you're leveraging that idea of collaboration to get more bangs for your buck. I mean, you know, people make comments about the culture of TDC in many respects, and I just find that really great that you put that on the table. Thank you for that. Just with regards to the comment in your report, page 237, around Lee River suitability for recreation, you mentioned that there's going to be a report to provide more details around what was found in the preliminary analysis.
I think the community there is highly interested, I think, in what's happening in the Lee River. I've been to meetings where people do make comments about what they perceive to be the quality of the river. So I guess firstly, when will we get that report? And then secondly, I think we need to make this information as public as possible and to communicate, because otherwise, in the absence of people having information, they have their own views. So when will we get it and how will we communicate?
You might have noticed throughout the river health section that there's quite a few reports that are coming, and that is because we have been one staff member down since January. So there's a lot of reports that have started and we just haven't had the staff to finish them off. So I guess all I can say is as soon as possible. And that will be then presented at the next Land and Water report, I think in October, November. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Shawcross.
Yeah, mine was around that algae as well, and just obviously the sooner that comes out, the better. And it's obviously been a concern that's come through from lots of the meetings, that space. So great.
Anything further? Has somebody moved? No. Deputy Mayor Bryant, someone happy to second? Councillor Kinmont. I've read with interest, of course, the areas, all of it, but the areas that relate to Mohua, and the team relating in with Farmer Group and the WCO aspects. So that's going. I mean, I just get the impression, and I'm here on the ground, that that's going well. But that is the case, isn't it? We've got good relationships in there. Yeah.
It's going really well. I didn't want to put too many details into the report because Farmer, it is up to them to share what they're doing, not up to us. So we're just respecting that relationship, but we're certainly having quite a few meetings and working really closely.
That was the impression I was getting, and I just so in terms of the WCO generally, we're progressing along well enough, aren't we? With all the areas that we're relating into and giving advice to and support to.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are. And a good example would have been, and that was in the report, we had Massey University come down a couple of weeks ago to do their masterclass, and we made sure that most of the farmers from the Farmer Group actually attended, and it was a really good couple of days out in that catchment to understand their issues, for them in terms of what can be done, as well as for Massey University to see the uniqueness. So we are now building on that relationship with Massey Uni to try and get more support from them to future.
Yeah, and I see there are a number of areas in the report where that's happening with significant agencies. It's very good. And interesting that there's other sort of things happening, like in the Bay, the sort of the forum we had recently with people presenting, around what they've done and been doing on their properties, and Farmer involved in that as well. And it's just, it's important that, and that's the point of that forum, is that we get a coordinated or a sort of integrated approach to, because we know what's happening with all these various things that are going on with different groups and agencies, I suppose. So I get a sense of confidence about that, and I don't know if it's misplaced or not, but I think there is enough of relating in. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your report. Really interesting reading, and great to see just all the various aspects and areas that you're working with. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Which brings us to the end of our meeting, and nothing further. I'll close with that for the care. thank you everybody for your input and staff for the great work that you're doing there. He karakia tātou, kia hiki, te kōrero, kia wātia, kia mama te manawa o te tangata, kia u, kia te ara mō tātou, e ora nei, ko rongo, kia runga, kia tina, hui e, tai kia. Kia ora everybody.